Politics, unfortunately, is often theater, and the Judiciary Committee, with some regularity, becomes farce. We're hearing a lot of high outrage that the positions of members of this committee have changed from 4 years ago. 180-degree reversal we're hearing. What's interesting is that the positions of every member of this committee have changed 180 degrees from 4 years ago. Every single Democrat on this committee 4 years ago banged the table, called unequivocally the Senate must confirm the nomination made in the presidential election year. Joe Biden unequivocally called for confirming the Supreme Court nominee. Hillary Clinton unequivocally called for confirming the nominee. Chuck Schumer unequivocally called for it. Nancy Pelosi unequivocally called for it. Do your job. That was the slogan our Democratic colleagues had on poster boards when they gave speeches on the Senate floor saying, do your job, do your job, do your job. Now suddenly, Senate Democrats are saying, don't do your job, don't do your job, don't do your job. But if we were to be honest, that's not surprising. And there is, in fact, a reason why the Democrats have changed their position and why the Republicans have changed their position. What's changed? They are markedly different circumstances, and markedly different circumstances in a way that is constitutionally significant. So let's pause a second and assess why that is. As our colleague Senator Lee laid out, the circumstance of a Supreme Court vacancy in a presidential election year is not unusual. In our nation's history, we've had a little over 2 centuries of experience as the United States of America. That situation has occurred 29 times. 29 times is a lot of times in the history of our country. What happens when a vacancy occurs during a presidential election year? Well, history shows us of those 29 times, presidents have made those Supreme Court nominations all 29. It's absolutely clear. What does a president do if a president has a vacancy during a presidential election year? The president makes a nomination. Our friends, Senator Booker, Senator Klobuchar, were both running for president. Were they in the White House, were this vacancy to occur, they would make the nomination. Democrats make the nomination, Republicans make the nomination. Everybody makes the nomination. That's what a president does. By the way, of the 44 individuals who served as the President of the United States, 22 of them, half, have made nominations of Supreme Court justices for vacancies that occurred in a presidential election year. So this is commonplace. So all of the high outrage that the president would nominate someone is silly. But how about the second half? What does the Senate do? What is the Senate precedent when a president nominates? Because sure, a president can nominate, but the Senate still has advice and consent. Well, it turns out the historical pattern is quite clear. If the president and the Senate are of the same party, the Senate confirms the nominee. And if the president and the Senate are of different parties for a vacancy during a presidential election year, the Senate does not confirm the nominee. What does history show us? Of the 29 times this has happened, 19 of them, the president and Senate were of the same party. 19 times. The Senate confirmed the nominee 17 of those times. How about when the president and the Senate are of different parties? Well, that's happened 10 times. And in those 10 times, the Senate has confirmed the nominee only twice. 2016, Barack Obama and Merrick Garland was one of those times. Now, nobody doubts, had the Senate in 2016 been confirmed by Democrats, the Senate would have confirmed Merrick Garland in a heartbeat, dancing down the street with ticker tape parade. There's no doubt about it that the Senate would have happily confirmed if the Senate and the president were of the same party. They were not. And so the Senate exercised its advice and consent constitutional authority to check the power. The difference is also not just a partisan difference. There are real, marked differences between what each political party is promising for judicial nominees. In 2016, Hillary Clinton promised to put on the bench liberal judicial activists who would embrace a left-wing vision of the Constitution. Donald Trump promised to nominate justices in the mold of Scalia and Thomas. The American people chose President Trump. That election has consequence. But it's not just the president's election. The American people elected a Republican majority in the Senate, not once, not twice, 3 times. In 2014, in 2016, in 2018, the last election, the American people grew our Republican majority in the Senate. Now, I recognize our Democratic colleagues don't like that. They would prefer a Democratic majority. Well, that's politics. We actually don't get to decide that. The voters get to decide that. But in our elections, judicial nominations and judicial confirmations were front and center. When Senate Republicans in 2016 exercised constitutional advice and consent authority to say, no, we will not confirm a nominee from the outgoing Democratic president, that was consistent with our promises to the people. And likewise, when we act now to confirm a constitutional justice, that is consistent with our promises to the voters, and it is the voters who have put the president and the Senate majority in the position to make that choice. I would point out the timing. We're 40 days away from Election Day. Senator Durbin, Senator Whitehouse suggested this is rushed. This is a short time frame. History, again, is very much on the side of the Judiciary Committee proceeding expeditiously, thoroughly, but expeditiously. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was confirmed in 42 days. We have 40 days right now. Justice Sandra Day O'Connor was confirmed in 33 days. Justice John Paul Stevens was confirmed in 19 days. By any measure, we have ample time for a full and careful consideration, particularly if it ends up, as appears likely, the president nominates someone this committee recently considered for a federal court already. There's a long historical precedent. In a couple of weeks, we're going to be in a judicial confirmation hearing, and I'm going to make an unfortunate prediction that this room is going to become an absolute circus. I don't know who the nominee is going to be. The president has said he intends to nominate a woman for this seat, and I guarantee you our Democratic colleagues are going to do everything they can to drag this woman through the mud. I've already noted tongue-in-cheek she better be looking for her junior high yearbooks for whatever damning admission she has in her yearbook. But we are going to see, I fear, a judicial nominee mistreated on national television. And I will point out the phenomenon of borking is not a bipartisan affair. Borking is the process that was named for this committee's shameful treatment of Robert Bork, dragging him through the mud, so much so that his name became a verb to last throughout the years and throughout the decades. But Democratic senators have been happy to bork Robert Bork. They have been happy to bork Clarence Thomas. They have been happy to bork Sam Alito. They were happy to bork Brett Kavanaugh. I want to note for the record, you have not seen Republican senators treat Democratic nominees that way. You have not seen Republican senators drag Democratic nominees through the mud and make aspersions as to their character and cause their children to cry because of the political games in this committee. And I fear we're about to witness something ugly. Final topic I want to address is timing. Senator Durbin said, why act by Election Day? We don't need to act that quickly. In my view, it is imperative that we complete this process by Election Day because we need a full complement of justices on the court in the event there are election disputes. Now, it has become a popular Democratic talking point. It has become a popular media talking point that it is Trump who's going to dispute the election. Let me say clearly and unequivocally, There will be a peaceful transition of power. I believe there will be a peaceful transition of power. If Joe Biden wins the election, Joe Biden will be sworn in as president. But what I fear is the reaction of the extreme left if Joe Biden loses the election. We've already seen anger and rioting and burning and violence in the streets leading up to this election. We know that Hillary Clinton, who was the Democratic nominee last time around, has explicitly told Joe Biden, under no circumstances should you concede. That means if Biden loses, assuming he follows Hillary's advice, he's filing lawsuits. He's challenging the legitimacy of the election. And I want this committee to focus in particular on something called the Transition Integrity Project. Transition Integrity Project was a project that was launched by a group of prominent Joe Biden supporters. It consisted of prominent Democrats supporting Joe Biden and then actually prominent Republicans who were also supporting Joe Biden. It was basically a collection of Biden's top supporters. And they war-gamed what might happen in a 2020 election. In the war games, the role of Joe Biden was played by John Podesta. Who is John Podesta? The members of this committee know that. John Podesta was Bill Clinton's chief of staff. John Podesta was the chairman of Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. John Podesta is a serious, respected graybeard in the Democratic Party and clearly someone who knows Joe Biden well. Well, in the war games they ran the scenario where Trump wins. On election day, Trump wins. And here's what John Podesta playing Joe Biden did. I'm just going to read. In a big popular win for Joe Biden, a narrow electoral defeat, presumably reached after weeks of counting the votes in Pennsylvania, for the war game, they cast John Podesta, who was Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, of the role of Mr. Biden. They expected him, when the votes came in, to concede, just as Mrs. Clinton had. But Mr. Podesta, playing Mr. Biden, shocked the organizers by saying he felt that his party, that's the Democratic Party, wouldn't let him concede. Alleging voter suppression, he persuaded the governors of Wisconsin and Michigan to send pro-Biden electors to the Electoral College. In this scenario, California, Oregon, and Washington then threatened to secede from the United States. Mr. Trump took office as planned. The House named Mr. Biden as president. The Senate and White House stuck with Mr. Trump. At that point in the scenario, the nation stopped looking to the media for cues and waited to see what the military would do. Now, this is not some crazy internet conspiracy. These are the leading graybeards of the Democratic Party laying out what they anticipate in 2020. And do you wonder why we need a full Supreme Court? God forbid that scenario, that constitutional crisis happens. If we have 8 justices on the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court divides 4-4, a 4-4 court can decide nothing. It has no authority to decide anything. It means, by the way, if the 11th Circuit rules one way concerning Florida and the 9th Circuit rules another way concerning Arizona, there's no Supreme Court to resolve that difference. And the chaos we saw 20 years ago in Bush versus Gore of 36 days could extend weeks and months and keep this country in a constitutional crisis. We need a functioning Supreme Court. And every time you hear the media gaslight you and say it's all because of a Trump legal challenge, remember, the candidate whose supporters are saying under no circumstances will he accept defeat and he will challenge and he will litigate and he will dispute the election, that candidate is Joe Biden. Regardless of who wins or loses, we need a Supreme Court to follow the law and ensure the Constitution is followed in this country. I'm confident this committee will take up that nominee and the Senate will confirm that nominee, as is our constitutional obligation.